These pearls of wisdom are brought to you by Carl Johnson and members of the Oyster Bay Church of Christ, located at 1044 Shadeville Road, which is 4 miles east of Crawfordville, Florida. Can you hear me? Mark chapter 4, verses 1 through 34 are about Jesus and his teachings. Jesus tells the parable of the sower and gives several simple instructions. Near the end of the lesson, he says, "If any man has ears to hear, let him hear." Then he adds, "Take heed what you hear." Maybe Jesus noticed some inattention among the disciples, prompting additional warnings to give careful attention. Jesus wanted his disciples to develop sound spiritual judgment that allowed them to listen with discrimination and be able to distinguish truth from error. He implored them to consider well what you are hearing. Jesus also explained that if we listen discerningly and meditate on his words, we'll receive and understand more of his divine truth. If we are careless hearers, we will not only forget what Jesus is saying at the time, but we will also fail to advance to any of his higher truths. I suppose since the days of Jesus, every preacher of the Word of God has struggled to maintain the audience's attention at some time or another. Even the Apostle Paul had a young man fall asleep and fall out of a third-story window during a sermon in Acts chapter 20. In the 1800s, Alexander Campbell attracted crowds so large that organizers had difficulty finding buildings large enough to accommodate them. But even he had difficulty maintaining the attention of members in his home congregation. Now, there are occasions when the attention of the audience can be traced back to the ineffectiveness of the speaker. But that explanation, however, does not explain the lack of attention given to Jesus or the Apostle Paul. The Lord warns that regardless of the effectiveness of the speaker, there will always be some in the audience who do not have receptive hearts and others who are dull of hearing. A professor named Ralph Lewis once said that we learn 10% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, but 60% of what we do. Lewis may have discovered why the Lord commands us to hear the word, Romans 10, verse 17, to check what we hear with follow-up reading, Acts 17, verse 11, and to make application of the teaching by doing what it says to do, James 1, 22. By following these 3 steps, we can become skillful readers who retain the words of God in our hearts, Luke 8, 12, Hebrews 3, 12, and whose lives will be transformed by the words we hear to the ultimate glory of God, Isaiah 43, verse 7. We encourage you not only to hear the Word of God, but to read and study the Bible. Then, as it says in James 1, verse 22, "Be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves." If you enjoyed today's Pearls of Wisdom and would like to hear more, just go to our website, oysterbaychurchofchrist.org, or visit us in person at 1044 Shadeville Road. Our worship services are at 10 a.m. Sunday morning and 1:30 p.m. Sunday afternoon.